Hey guys, Boy here. Today we're going to talk about the best mid hero in my opinion this patch, and that's backed by data. DP has the highest win rate and pick rate combined of any mid hero, and we'll see why in a second. In this game, Gunnar is playing versus a mid Clinkz, which is a pretty annoying hero, so while technically he loses the lane, at least that's according to data buff, I would say this is more of an even matchup. Let's watch how he tries to mitigate his losses and how he comes back into this game. The first thing to notice with his items is the double circlet instead of Mantle of Intelligence. This is not something you have to necessarily do every game, but against hard lanes, having 2 extra strength and agility versus -1 intelligence is definitely a good thing to have. Another interesting thing to mention is him going for bounty instead of blocking. He's against the Clinkz, right? And that's a hard lane, blocking matters, but that's not entirely true. Clinkz has such immense attack range that even with a good block, Gunnar will take damage once he is close enough for right clicks, and DP is actually a really good hero at first blood because of Spirit Siphon, which he gets a kill and doesn't even have to learn, so that's a little lucky, but let's keep going. Clinkz did block though, so let's watch how Gunnar plays even though he has bad equilibrium. Scared players would draw aggro, right? You don't want to take unnecessary harass from Clinkz, but here's the thing. DP at level 1 has 66 base damage versus 50 from Clinkz. His harass is not that impressive this early, and his base damage is awful, so he just stands back and tries to deny creeps, which he successfully does. See how he mimics Clinkz's movement when he tries to go forward to harass? Once the creep is really low, he moves back and forward, and yeah, Clinkz could attack him, but then he's giving up the creep, and even when he goes for it, DP successfully denies it again. The genius part of it all is that instead of learning Creep Swarm to secure the range creep, he uses Spirit Siphon precisely at the time where his range creep starting to take damage. This not only gives him an extra deny and harass on the enemy, but it rewards him with the range creep anyways, all of that with less mana being spent and more harass being done. At level 2, he uses Creep Swarm to secure the second range creep, and this is a great start. Because he pushed the creeps into Clinkz's tower, it's harder for him to get CS, and because of this trade, Clinkz loses a melee creep because he felt forced to attack because of so much pressure Gunnar is doing. But things start to get pretty hard once Clinkz get more levels. With the minus arm, Clinkz can harass you more and deny you more, and he gets a ton of HP. So Gunnar starts drawing more aggro, especially because he's really close to level 3, so committing Spirit Siphon so close to it is going to be a waste, since your charges will refresh at a slower rate. See how quickly he uses the spell once he gets 3? Not only he harasses Clinkz here, but he heals himself and forces the enemy to miss a melee creep. Obviously this play makes sense because he was sending a salve, so he knew even though the trade was not amazing there, he is 8 and 5 versus the 6-0 of Clinkz, and he is gonna be full HP for the next wave. Because of the extra denies and the fact he didn't use Spirit Siphon at 2, he gets 4 here before the enemy. He uses his E to maybe prevent the range creep from being farmed, while he trades really effectively with Creep Swarm at the end. Pretty basic, but worth remembering that he constantly blocks his own creep wave to avoid being in a bad spot after the creeps meet. And another really important aspect of this game, in my opinion, is how Gunnar itemized. While Treads is a frequent choice on Death Prophet because of the tank ability and the mana, because your hero does struggle with it, Phase Boots gives you armor, and it's just much better in this game considering Clinkz is playing mid and will be a part of all mid-game fights. So he starts Phase Boots with the Chainmail, and that doubles his armor, and I don't have to explain why this is great in this scenario. Eventually though, he goes for a Regen Rune, overstays his welcome a little bit, and you can clearly see the effect of Chainmail. While he could run away faster with Boots, he wouldn't harass Clinkz nearly as much since he wouldn't be using Spirit Siphon for so long, and the only reason he dies here is actually Shaker, not the Clinkz damage. He jukes Clinkz perfectly well and only dies because of that rotation at the end. Mind you, he's 20 and 1 versus the 14 and 1 of Clinkz. He did buy a lot of early regen though, but this goes to show that DP is equipped to deal even with the Clinkz, showcasing how strong of a laner she is, but what grants her this massive win rate is actually her ult. Clinkz has terrible wave clear, so with level 3 Creep Swarm, Gunnar pushes the wave, and when the next one is about to come, he ults. And there's 2 outcomes when you do this. A lot of tower damage or a huge rotation from the enemy team, and that usually happens in higher MMR games, which more often than not is going to be an advantage to you at the end of the day. Shaker was already there, and they forced 2 extra TPs, which surely stops Gunnar from taking the tower, but usually this wouldn't grant them the tower. The problem was Axe TP top even after seeing the huge commotion mid, and Ricky is a level 5 boy that wouldn't do too much there, so they lose the tower despite Gunnar playing the lane really well. That's definitely Axe's fault. So what do you do if your first exorcism is a disaster like in this game? Well, you have to jungle, you have to address the mid lane, and you have to control the runes. Even that was a problem for Gunnar this game, but one thing you have to realize about DP is how mana dependent she is, and on top of that, when you have a subpar game, you're not gonna have an abundance of it. So watch how Gunnar backpacks every ounce of intelligent items he has before using bottle, and also how he refuses to use creep swarming in jungle camps this early. Exorcism is about to be ready, and he has to be in fighting shape, because this is not a hero that can jungle for 5 minutes and come back stronger. You need to use your exorcism constantly, and you have to make sure you're ready to do so without wasting time running to the fountain or wasting gold with more mana regen if you can avoid it. Eventually, he realizes DK used Elder Dragon form bottom, and he ults for mid again, which not surprisingly forces a huge reaction mid, and since his cores were not playing there, he dies again, and you might be thinking, this DP sucks, why isn't he farming U-Scepter in level 12 so he can actually play Dota? Well, that's not how you're supposed to play the game, especially in this bracket. If he was farming, then bottom tower would have died anyways, right? He would lose all of the bounties there, and DP isn't a Medusa or a super greedy hero. Like a Dragon Knight, you're supposed to constantly force objectives because that's what your hero excels at. In this case, I think Gunnar misplayed slightly. He never Spirit Siphoned the DK at the start, and it took him a while to engage, and his Void Spirit also took way too much time to Remnant. His death was super close, so I think if either of those are executed a little better, he would survive, and going for the exorcism here is still good. But even this death has meaning. Since this wasn't a jungle death, the creep wave is pushed so mid tier 2 tower is not under threat. Also, since everyone is clumped together mid, they have to separate to get back at farming, and that gives Radiant a kill in this area, which also forces Burning Army, giving Radiant a window to fight once DP is back up. Going back at the everyone has to split thing to go back to farming, Abaddon went bottom without the supports. He dies since Dire split. I'm a big fan of the Blade Mail choice this game. While U-Scepter is a common item on DP and can hold Clinkz in place once the item is ready, it doesn't stop Burning Army from doing damage, and even if you use yourself, it actually lasts for a long time, and that ability is gonna be up in every fight. The bulk of Dire's damage comes from DK and Clinkz, and those boys primarily deal physical damage, which Gunnar can start to mitigate right now for 500 gold. Whereas the U-Scepter components do nothing for his survival up to the item being done, and it costs almost 3000 gold. In this game, Death Prophet's role is to buy enough time for Riki to have Diffusal Blade and Axe to have Blink Dagger, so that they can actually group up and fight as 5. DP could have maybe died last this game, but overall, it would have diminished their chances of winning, because then the Riki and Axe would have been pressured, and it's not like farming an item for a long time is gonna do that much for DP in the long run. So by itemizing on survival and prioritizing pressure in lanes and defending towers, Gunnar wins this game. Another key thing I want to mention is DP learning the damage talent at 10 instead of maxing Creep Swarm, and that goes back to something we already discussed. Mana is really important in this hero. Imagine a fight breaks out and he uses 4 Spirit Siphon charges, 2 Creep Swarms, ult, and 1 Silence. That's 910 mana, and as you can see, it's more mana than he can afford. Obviously, mana regen and stick is going to help a little bit, but this clearly means that for him to fight at 100% strength, he needs to pretty much spend all of his mana, and the damage talent allows him to address lanes and jungle, albeit not as fast as he can, but be ready to fight and be full mana at the same time, and we already established how important that is. At the end of the day, Dire has all of their cooldowns ready, and they were not shy at forcing fights up to this point. Once Blink and Diffusal are ready, they smoke, but find no target. But we can see the power of a 5 vs 5 fight when DP is in your team. Dire collapses on Gunnar mid, but this time, they don't have Clinkz, and Gunnar knows this because he has vision of him in the minimap top. They blow Echo to no avail, and since DP disengages successfully here and Clinkz dies, they can finally take a good fight. The crazy thing about this hero is that you're really strong in lane, so having awful games is hard, and even when that happens, all you need to focus on is surviving because this hero naturally fights 5 vs 5s really well, and when you win fights, buildings just fall naturally. We already talked about how surviving is important in this game, and Halberd accomplishes so many things here. Not only its evasion, so more effective HP against the physical damage or the heroes that matter in this case, it's also max HP, it's a disarm that goes through BKB, and on top of it, it increases the regen from Spirit Siphon and his ult. It's just a perfect fit. Radiant takes a great fight, and we can clearly see the power of armor. Dire engages on them, but because Axe and DP were nicely positioned, they start the fight with a kill, and when Burning Army and DK show up, watch how Blade Mail and Siphon makes him withstand all of that damage. You might be thinking that Uceptor would have the same result, but you're wrong. See those centers? If he just Uceptors in the middle of the wave there's not enough damage for them to repel Dire, and what would have happened is centers would hit their stomp and kill Gunner. What happens instead is everyone survives, Axe gets a great call, and they get a team wipe, which completely crushes the early advantage from Dire. This ends up being the game-winning fight for Radiant, and part of this being a great fight is once again the mentality of saving mana. After that one fight, Gunner held on this illusion rune, and eventually Dire decides that they will push, even though they have no Aegis, Death Prophet's gonna have ult really soon, and that's just the nature of their draft. They also know that this newly purchased Sange means DP has no buyback, and if they can burst her, there is a chance this is a lane of barracks, and maybe a new beginning for them. But because while he was jungling, Gunner never used that illusion rune to farm faster and mainly attack creeps, he can disjoint the Dragon Tail here. That would be the perfect setup for Echo. Shaker gets impatient, blows the spell, and the game quickly goes sideways. Guys, thank you a lot for watching. If you're interested in coaching, as I said, it's been a slow process for me, but if you are interested in the rates, you can DM me on Twitter and get all of the information you need. If you're looking for more people to play Dota, maybe you don't like pubbing by yourself, we do have a Discord server with a lot of pretty cool people, so check that out if you're interested. If you like these videos, maybe check our Patreon, there's a couple of rewards there that might be pretty cool for you. And you can follow me on Twitch to see me stream and cast, and I'm also considering streaming on YouTube if that's something you guys care about. Thank you a lot for watching, have a good one and bye.